My name is Alex Del Sordo, and I'm with my father, Sam Del Sordo, here at Finish Line Shuttlecast.
And 20 and race face!
This is the Rower's Choice Podcast.
This is Alex Del Sordo at another Rower's Choice Podcast, Zoomcast, whatever you want to call this thing. And I will say this one more time. CJ has got to come up with a damn name for this. It's starting to get a little irritating. But I am with Chris Leonard, and for those of you who do not know Chris Leonard, you're going to get a chance to know him, but he is the head men's coach of Capital Crew, one of the #1 ranked crew programs in our virtual erg media competition, and someone who has been east and west. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but we're going to talk about his rowing background, his experiences coaching at many different levels, which is really impressive, and some of his coaching philosophies and his training philosophies, but also how he has managed a large group of athletes, very good athletes in COVID-19. So Chris, thank you for joining this interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for doing this. I know for a lot of programs and people in and outside of rowing, like this is a pretty tough time. So I think you guys doing this bracket and all these podcasts and stuff just brings kind of a little bit of normalcy to sort of craziness situation. So I know us at Capital, and I know from talking to other programs and stuff, the feeling is like, we really appreciate you guys doing this and taking the time to put all this on and go through all the scores and all of that.
Man,
so thank you guys.
You're giving me chills, Chris. You're giving me chills, man. I think you'll learn in this interview that there's a lot of love for this sport that we have. There's an obsession, and I know that you rode in college, and I'll learn more of your background. But if I had lost my senior year at GW or at Mainland, I would not be where I am right now, right? So anything that we can do. But let me get into this, because you got a unique story. So
totally.
And for the listeners and watchers, this is a beard that you've decided to do. You decided this, and you look like a homeless man. I'll just say it. Like, you're okay
Totally.
with that, right? You're okay.
Yeah, I know when my mom watches this, she's going to immediately call me and tell me that I have to cut it.
I hope she does.
As long as the fiance is fine with it, I'm going to keep it. So
keep it going. I mean, it is a good looking beard. So tell me about. You're welcome. Tell me about your first stroke to running Capital Crew today. Like, walk me through that period of time.
So it's actually kind of interesting. So I was a coxswain. If you can believe it, like, I don't know, probably 50 pounds ago, I was a coxswain. So I started at Iona Prep in New Rochelle, back in New York. So I'm an East Coaster, even though I'm out in California now.
Sure.
And then one of my really good friends for a long time, since I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, and my mom went to college with one of his dad's best friends. So our families kind of knew each other. Brendan Murphy. I don't know if you guys know him.
Yeah, of course we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So Brendan Murphy found me. I was playing tennis and baseball at the time, and I was in the lobby, and he literally picked me up and carried me to the coach's office and was like, "I found you a coxswain."
That is awesome.
So I was like, I don't know anything about this, but I'll go give it a shot. And then that was halfway through my freshman year, and the team at Iona had just started.
Wow.
So yeah, kind of turned into a love for rowing and all of that, and coached for 4 years in high school. Ended up going to Marist College, which was an absolute blast.
Now, what are those years? So we want to be very specific with this.
Totally.
So what were your years at Iona Prep?
So it's 2010 to 14, no, sorry, that was college. Jeez. 2006 to 2010.
You're getting old. All right.
06 to 10 was Iona Prep, and then Marist was 10 to 14.
So one of my close friends is TJ McGuire. He rode.
Oh, totally.
Marist.
Yeah.
I think he graduated in 07. So
yeah, he was in a couple of the alumni boats that had coxed at the Charles. Over the years, so which is pretty awesome.
Really good dude.
Yeah.
I rode with him a lot at Potomac. Him and I have a lot of history together. So I always ask, whenever someone says they rode at Marist, I have to ask if they know TJ. So good. So then 2010, 2004, what was Marist Crew like back then in those 4 years?
It was fun.
Yeah.
So we weren't, I think in the past couple of years with the new head coach and whole staff there, like Campbell Woods has done a pretty excellent job there. kind of bringing them back to what they were before I got there.
Yeah.
My first 2 years, it was a little bit more competitive than my junior, senior year. And then after I'd graduated, a lot of the guys that started coming in those recruiting classes started to get a little bit older and become a little bit more relevant again. We had a coaching change halfway through the careers or during my college career. So after my sophomore year, Sean Clark was the head coach, and then he moved down to Philly. And I know he was a director of Vesper for a little bit, and then he was at St. Joe's for a little bit, and kind of bouncing around the Philly scene. So I stay in touch with Sean sometimes. He was awesome. Really, really loved having him on the team and rowing for him. And that was part of the reason why I ended up going to Marist. I was actually pretty certain I was going to GW to begin with. And then, just kind of went up for like the accepted students day at Marist. Told my parents, no, I'm going to GW. I'm set. And then went up there and talked to Sean and kind of loved it and sent him my deposit the next day. And
I like that. It was, so let me ask you this. So you are, I think you're the first coxswain that we have interviewed. I think you are. And so there's a question that I have here for other coxswains, like high school coxswains.
Absolutely.
So my question is, what is the recruiting experience going from coxswain in high school to college? Like, what is that like? What are the things that are important for college coaches to know? And what is important for high school kids to know that are coxswains that want to be at the collegiate level?
Yeah. So I think the recruiting, everything's a little bit different than when I was in high school. I mean, even, what is it now? It's like 10 years ago. Yeah. I think like the times have gotten drastically faster for rowers in general. And I think over the past, I don't know how many years, but I think coaches are getting a lot more involved in what the coxswains are doing. And I think part of that is a realization that, hey, it's not just a little guy sitting in the seat or girl sitting in the seat. Like, they actually do have a pretty big impact on practice and racing. And I know we stress at our program and at Marin and kind of everywhere I've been, like, being a good practice manager first is pretty important. Right. And I think that's one of the things that when college coaches are reaching out about coxswains in particular, like it's tough because they don't have a scorer or anything like that really. So I'd encourage coxswains to make sure you're managing practice really well. Because I think when college coaches reach out to your coach in particular, it's a really nice thing when you can say, yeah, he makes my life a lot easier. I think that goes a pretty long way on the college side. And we have we've been lucky that we've had a lot of really good coxswains over the past 2 years. Our top 2 coxswains last year, one is at Oregon State, and she was awesome. And then the other one, he's a freshman at Syracuse now, who's fantastic. And the two of them, watching them run practice, I mean, we didn't have to tell them anything. They were pretty good communicating with each other. And then we're super lucky this year. We had a coxswain who'd been on the team for 6 years. Who's going to Cal next year. And then coxswain who actually switched. She was a novice for the novice women last year, and she made the switch to the men's team. Her brother was on our team. She's gone down to San Diego State. And again, it was a pretty similar situation where the two of them were able to, it was almost like they would anticipate what we were going to do next. So they always had the crew in the right position. And part of that is having a good relationship with your coach. I mean, Grant and Sloan, both the two that we had this year, would record pretty much all of their practices and sit down. The two of them would go over tapes, or when the guys were lifting or doing something else that I was able to take some time away and go sit with them. We'd go over practices and races and kind of develop a relationship there where we both, or all three of us, kind of knew what the other one was doing at all times. And it just made our lives a lot easier.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing though is like type A is a really important thing, right?
Totally.
And strong management, great communication skills.
Yeah.
Having insight into where you need to be, right? And that's, you can't teach that. You can't teach like insight into a sport, right? Or like where to be. Now, as a coxswain yourself for 9 years or 8 years, are you harder on your coxswains than your athletes? I mean, do you give them more pressure?
I think no. If you ask them, I think.
Okay.
And part of that, we every year before the season starts, we have a meeting where we'll kind of lay out expectations for the year for the rowers, the athletes, the team in general. Talk to them about kind of what their goals are for the year, because I think that's pretty important that we as a staff are aligned with what they're doing. Or what they're trying to accomplish, right? If we're on track A and they just want to come out and have fun and have a good time, like I think we're just going to end up butting heads a lot. So we try to be pretty clear and upfront. And one of the things is I do tell the coxswains pretty straight up that I'm going to expect a lot of them. And there are, some rules that we have, and they were implemented by the previous coach that I think were awesome. And Ben Heiss is great, and that was part of the reason why I came up to Capital, and he's down at University of San Diego now, which is awesome. Cool. But the coxswains had to be 6 feet apart all the time, no matter what we were doing. So and that's kind of our thing on the men's side is 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. So regardless of where they are on the course, they're always 6 feet apart. We have Casey, the coxswain that was at Oregon State now, she was awesome and took a ton of notes on where everybody needs to be on our lake, wherever it may be. And we're super lucky that we get to row on Natoma.
Sure. I mean, it's a beautiful course.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know anywhere else where we got just about 2,500 of probably 12 lanes. And then there's one turn and then another, we say 3K, but it's probably a little bit more than that, of another straight shot. But there is like an island halfway through that you can only go on one side. So she was super diligent about like when you could start the turn to go around the island, like all the land markers, where you need to point when you're on the course. Cause it's a pretty easy place to be a coxswain, but it is kind of deceptive. Like the dam at the end for everybody that comes up to Natoma, the dam at the end of the course, if you steer off the dam, you're going to go on an angle. Like the dam is, even though it looks straight and on all the course maps, it is straight, it's not.
So these coxswains, what you've done is you've put a lot of, I like that you set expectations, you have open communication, you have a lot of expectations for them as well. So you put them to higher standards. Yeah. And they just know their surroundings. So that's really good advice for coxswains going into the next phase of their lives, right? And for coaches too, to put a lot of emphasis on training their coxswains to be good, because like you said earlier, as long as they're inside the boat, they know more of what's going on with their athletes than you do as a coach, right? They can see things, feel things. Now I'm really more interested now that we're like, I'm hearing your story and I love it.
Totally.
But you know, you've coached, you've like, after graduating, you've decided coaching was your career, right? Like that's what you wanted to do.
Eventually,
like, So you had a stint at Harvard, right?
Yeah.
After Marist. You got to tell me about that, because Harvard's like, I have a love affair, with Harvard. So tell me, like, what is it? What was that experience? How did you get involved? Like, why did you do it? And then what got you from there to go to the West?
Yeah. So I was, kind of goes back to when I was in college. So after my junior year, I was lucky enough to get invited to University Games Camp. So that was in Boston.
Nice.
So did that, and that was one of the most fun things I've done. Like we got to go race in Russia and see a ton of different sports and meet people from all over, which was really, really cool. And then, so Bruce Smith, who was the director at CRI at the time, and Matt Layer and Kane, I don't remember his last name because we always just called him Kane. We're at CRI, and I think Kane's still there. And they were sort of running the team that summer, and it was us and the men's lightweight 8 training together, which was a ton of fun. So stayed in contact with those guys, and right after I graduated, they asked me if I wanted to go to the IRL in Boston, and I was like, no, I'm gonna I'm done rowing, gonna go work in finance. So I went and worked for an investment bank for like 8 months, and
Oh, wow.
they kept asking me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, all right, sure, I'm gonna do this. And a lot of that was my dad was we were talking, and he was telling me like, hey, if this is something you're passionate about, go give it a shot now. I was 22. And he's like, if you go and it's not what you think, like, you can always go back to finance. He's like, you're probably not going to want to start rowing or start a coaching career and be an assistant and work your way up and volunteer and all that stuff when you're in your 40s.
Yeah, right.
So part of it, I was in Boston doing the IRL camp, and part of that is you have to do practical somewhere and volunteer and do all of that. So I was super fortunate and got in contact with the Harvard Lightweights and went and volunteered there for a year with it was Mikhail Bartman, who's at Temple now, and Ian Accomando, who's still at Harvard as the men's assistant coach. So it was fun. It was a lot. I learned a ton, not just coaching, but just from sitting in the office with those guys and Charlie Butt and Pat LePage and Mikhail Bartman, and that was the staff at the time. And Billy was there also, who's now the head coach of the Lightweights. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and talking to Mikhail about his experiences in the Netherlands. And I mean, he's 3-time Olympic medalist, which is pretty incredible. And I'm
writing down the names of these people. You have been around some of the best coaches in our sport,
which I've been super, super fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, not a lot of people get that chance. You know what I mean? Like,
no, and
I get a chance to sit in a room with them.
Yeah,
for days or hours at a time.
Absolutely.
So at the IRL,
yeah, and
at Harvard, at what point did you say, I got to explore this coaching thing? I don't want to do finance. I just need to do this.
So when I got up there, I got up there at the beginning of June. So before everything started, and started hanging out at CRI a bit and working some of the summer camps and things, just trying to get involved. And one of my roommates at the time, he's now an assistant at Princeton, Joe Gartland, who's I'm still really close with, and we talk all the time. But he was kind of just talking to him about it, and he'd been around a lot. Like, he was coaching BB&N, and then he was at Williams, and he'd done a ton in his own rowing career in high school and Syracuse BU. But it was, I think talking to him a lot just made me realize, like, yeah, this is something I kind of want to do. Mm-hmm. And then going through the summer, it was fine. And we were just doing a lot of summer camps and all of that. And then the season started up at Harvard, and that was good. And I think the kind of turning point for me was really our winter training trip down in Sarasota. So we were down there with all the returning varsity guys, and then all the recruits, and then top like 8 or so walk-ons. So the way it worked, at least when I was there, was we had a pretty big team in the fall, and Ian ran all the walk-ons and the freshmen, which he does a fantastic job with. And then I was kind of with like the 3V, 4V-ish group for the fall. And then when we got down to Sarasota, just hanging out with those guys and being around the team again, like really being around the team all the time. It was just cool. And we were at Nathan Benderson for a bit, and we did all our selection there. And then we were at Manatee Park, which was a pretty cool spot. And again, just like hanging out it was mainly with like Ian and Pat. And talking to those guys about why they're coaching and how much they enjoy it, and their own both rowing and coaching careers. I was like, yeah, this is definitely something I could see myself doing, and I'm going to kind of run with this. You know,
that's really powerful. So the moral there is that you just spent time asking the right questions, right? Asking the questions of these coaches that have been doing it for most of their lives. And there was just something in their response that said to you in your heart, in your head, that this is it. I got to do this. Is that
Absolutely
accurate?
Yeah, totally. And it's I think a lot of times coaches that have a ton of experience kind of have this, I'm trying to find the right word, kind of aura around them where it's sort of intimidating to talk to them, but
Yeah,
like
you're right.
they're all people and they all love rowing. So I think like talking to them about rowing and why they do it and all that stuff. I mean, you guys know, like we talk about stuff for hours. So
It's funny you say aura. So like I'm a boat builder and
yeah,
I sell boats for a living and I fix boats for a living. But if Mike Tady's walking down the street, I am immediately uncomfortable. Like I'm like, I don't even know what to say to this guy. Like part of me like wants to run up and shake his hand and give him a hug and say, you're the greatest. Or I want to go to Steve Gladstone and say, I just want to just sit down next to you, my man, because so I get it. That's a really good observation that you have, right? That these great coaches that we have looked up to as young guys or young women for years, it's hard to ask them questions like, hey, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Can you give me some pointers?
yeah. And
I appreciate that.
That's something that Ben and I had talked about right when I first got up here. And when he started coaching, he was at UC Irvine and they just started and they've become a pretty awesome club team. But he actually reached out when he first started to Steve Gladstone because he looks up to Steve a ton and he was like, hey, I'm just getting started in coaching. Like, would you mind if I picked your brain? And Steve was, by all accounts of talking to Ben, Steve was awesome. Gave him his phone number. They talked for like an hour and a half. And I think a lot of these coaches that are somewhat intimidating in a way, we've kind of built that up in our head. So I think like if this is something you want to do, don't be afraid to talk to people because I think all of the coaches are super willing to reach out to anybody that's trying to get into the sport, right? We're all at the end of the day trying to do the same thing and bring rowing to as many people as possible and get it mainstream and have fun racing, right? So if I think a lot of these coaches are super willing to pass along knowledge and stuff that they've learned along the way, mistakes they've made and all of that stuff and pass it along to the younger generation, even some of the rowers. Like I would encourage people to talk to coaches that maybe you look up to or you feel like won't want to talk to me. In my experience, everybody in the rowing world's been pretty nice and pretty forthcoming with information and willing to help out wherever possible.
It's because it's not like the NFL where there's tens of millions of dollars on the line.
Right.
Like we're making ends meet most of the time, and like we're just trying to just get through the day and like get through a good weekend on a regatta. Now, okay, so you're at Harvard, and then you say, all right, I'm going to Marin. So let's talk about one, how you found that job.
Yeah. What
was that process like? And then why Marin? So why go from east to west?
I honestly had no idea that I wanted to go into junior rowing. I thought like, okay, I'm gonna be in college. Like this is the thing I want to do. College rowing, awesome. Like everybody's fast. It's college. I'm at Harvard. This is great. After the year happened, McKeel ended up leaving. And he went to Port, so didn't exactly know what was going on with that situation. And I was a volunteer, so I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen with this. And I saw the Marin job was posted on Row 2K. So I reached out to Sandy, sent over my resume and cover letter and all that stuff. And Sandy gave me a call and we were talking for a bit on the East Coast. And I met her at Mercer because nationals were there that year. So drove over to Mercer, met Sandy and we talked for a little bit and talked to her coxswain because they'd never been to Mercer and that was where I had my championship every year. So just kind of got talking about what to expect, where the wind is, all of that stuff. And then Sandy actually had offered me a job to go out and be the women's assistant coach. So I was planning on going out there. It's like, okay, never coached girls before, never coxed girls before, but sure, it's Marin, right? So, and that was kind of the thing that brought me to the West Coast. I was like, all right, if I'm going to get into junior rowing, like Marin's a pretty good spot. Sandy, everybody knows who Sandy is and she's been awesome and we're still in touch and maybe talked a couple of days ago. So then I was planning on moving out we were living in Princeton at the time. And I think like it's the 2 days before my birthday in August, she'd called me and she asked if I would be interested in coaching the boys, as assistant coach for the boys. Dustin had left and he went to Los Gatos and then was at Cal. So I said, yeah, that would be awesome. And asked when they started. And she said 4 days ago. So packed up and drove out to Marin. So.
Oh, you drove. I drove.
So I wanted my car out there, and my now fiance, she wanted to bring her single out. So loaded up the single and drove across the country.
So what kind of car and how long did it take you to do that trip?
At the time I had a Challenger and 4 days.
So I have driven across the country 9 times, I think, with a truck and trailer. Yeah, no, I got stories, man. I've done 150,000 miles with a truck and trailer. It's disgusting.
That sucks.
I have driven to Chicago and back over 60 times.
Wow.
Yeah, no, CJ will tell you, like, it's obnoxious. But it's interesting. I always like to ask that question because that's a miserable 4 days.
Got a little black box mug for you.
Chicago. That's an interesting 4 days. So was Andrew Lennox at that program at the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
so Andrew was the head coach when I got out there.
Okay, and then you jumped into his position. Is that right?
Yeah, it was after Thanksgiving. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know he ended up wanting to go back to New York.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was.
I lived with his family.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, so I wanted to be. So he rode with me at GW, and I wanted to be a TV anchor man like you wouldn't believe. And
I can see that.
Thank you. I got a job at ABC Television in Pittsford, New York, and his mom said,
"Oh, sweet.
You know what? Why don't you just live with us? Like, we think you're cool, and we appreciate you." So I was there for like 9 months. I coached Pittsford High School. It failed miserably.
Awesome.
And Andrew and I go way back. So we go back since 2005.
Cool.
He has a special place in my heart. So Marin, so you drive across the country. You have a fiance. You throw a damn boat on the roof of your car, and you're there for about 2 years. And now we're here. We're at Capitol, right?
Yep.
So So I get you. You know, you're on road 2K. You find this position. How do you get from Marin to Capitol? What's that like?
Yeah, so that one that was interesting. So after Andrew left, I was the interim head coach, and I know Sandy was, and we've kind of talked about it. Like, I was 25 at the time,
Jeez.
and I know she kind of wanted somebody with more experience in there. I'd been coaching for 3 years. Right.
Yeah.
And one was volunteer, one was an assistant, and we did pretty well. And then interim head coach, I think we did fine for what we had. And we got 4th that year, which we got 4th in the 4 at nationals, which was good.
Sure.
By Marin standards, maybe not fantastic, but it was good.
It's good enough.
I know she was looking for somebody with a little bit more experience, and we had talked about it. And Ben, who was the head coach at Capitol at the time, and I had gotten fairly close over the years. And then over the summer, Joe was helping out at Oakland and running their summer camp. So it was like Oakland, Marin, SI, Sarah, like all the guys kind of in the Bay Area. We came together, raced at Club Nationals.
Nice.
So it was myself, Joe, and Jovan, who's now the associate head coach of the boys at Oakland. So super, super fun summer. But when we were at Club Nationals, Ben had called me and we got to talking about what I was doing next year. And I wasn't super sure at the time if I was going to stay at Marin or not. And one of the things that he had said to me, and I'll remember this forever, but he was like, "Hey, why don't we, like, instead of just racing each other, try to team up and beat everybody?" And I was like, "Okay." And then he's like, "Yeah, I mean, they had a pretty good fleet at the time, which we've kind of revamped recently, which is awesome. And a lot of that was Ben just hustling and grinding and trying to get boats in, and got an awesome fleet deal with Vespoli now, and they've helped us out a ton. But like, he told us we've got everything set up. We got the water. If we lose, it's our fault." And I was like, "Okay, that's a pretty cool challenge." So head up there and do that. And then that year, so 18, 19, super fun, really awesome group of guys. Ben and I got along super, super well. And yeah, he ended up sitting in the office over the summer, and we were kind of talking about the next year, and he got a call from University of San Diego, kind of out of the blue, asking if he'd want to go down there. And he had a bunch of Capital athletes that were down there that had told the AD to reach out to him. He said no. Comes to August, they came back again, and they're like, hey, we really want to get you down here. And he ended up heading out and kind of fell into this. So it's been fun.
So, so you're well, it sucks. COVID-19 has stopped your spring from actually happening. So your first real time.
Yeah.
How have you coped with that? How have you I know you accepted it, but like, how have you coped with it so far?
Yeah, it was, it's been tough. I think so this group in particular was a pretty special group, like our guys. And I think we're going to have a pretty awesome season. We had a really good fall, which I know doesn't really translate to the spring necessarily all the time. But I mean, they head of the Charles, they won the 4, set the course record. Head of the American, we set the course record.
Oh, hold on. Let's rewind it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. I know junior rowing, I think, better than anybody on the planet. And you're telling me that you had your 4 guys break the course record this past fall at the Charles?
Yeah.
And you're saying, I don't know if that's going to translate very well to spring racing.
Well, it's a 4 and an 8. Like,
I don't give a shit. Right? I don't care. Like, all right. All I'm going to say is it would have translated.
I'm trying to be humble.
I don't want
I'm told all the time that I'm too cocky, so I'm trying to
talk about that in a second.
Yeah,
I got something we want to talk about here in a
second.
Totally. But you have how old are these guys that broke the course record at the Charles?
So we had 3 seniors and a junior, and the coxswain was a senior. He's going to Cal.
Now, are these 4 guys racing in our NCAA type bracket?
3 of them are.
3 of them are. Wow.
3 of them are. So our captain, Louis Gallia, he's senior. He stroked it. This guy, Brett Holt, who's going to Cal, he's actually on the bracket challenge team also. So he's a first-year varsity guy. He had started rowing last year. Really special kid, great athlete, really, really good teammate. It's so funny. I mean, Brett's a big dude. He's 6'7", 210, like awesome kid. Like great rower, and he was a soccer player. I don't know how he was a soccer player. He's and he was not a goalie. So he's a big kid, really fit kid. But he's like really, really close with one of the guys on our team, and I know he'll be excited that I mentioned him, Hudson Cole, who's a freshman, and he's maybe 5'8" and like 130 soaking wet, and that's just kind of Brett as a person. Like he would, and Lewis too. Like Hudson's 2K'ing, and the 2 of them are like coxing this little freshman on our team who's got the best attitude in the world, funniest kid. But I mean, he's 14. He's 14 and he's 5'8", and our 2 huge guys are there coxing him and helping him out and talking to him at school, driving him to practice, all sorts of stuff. So like, which is really awesome. And I think that says a lot about the guys that we had this year, that they're really, really about the team.
Well, take some credit. Take some credit where credit's due. A lot of that comes in the coach, right? So establishing that environment. You need. I mean, you're young enough, and you are younger than me, but you're young enough to know that. Like, don't be naive to that. Know that what you're creating, and the other coaches with your program, it's not just you, right? Like,
no, definitely not.
The coach, but everybody is building that environment, that team, and that's a very powerful place to be, right?
Yeah.
Now with your guys, like, how deep is your program?
Like how many guys do we have?
I mean, how many athletes are on this squad?
So the varsity team we had this spring, we had 48, including coxswains. Which I think is a pretty good number. So everybody's here. I mean, I think if everybody was here, we could get just about 5/8 on the water, which was pretty awesome.
And now this is your full-time job, right? This is what you do. This is your career. Do you think that now that you've had a taste of college, high school, do you want to stay in this world, or do you want to go into a different realm of rowing?
That's a tough one. And I know the guys all the time think I'm going to leave. And for everybody watching, I'm not. I'm coming back next year. So just for everybody's knowledge, I think it's super different. And part of why I like junior rowing, and I feel like I'm going to stay for a while. It's like the impact you have on the athletes, not just necessarily in rowing, but kind of outside, I think is a pretty unique situation. And I think when you're in college, at least in my experience, and granted, I was only there for a year, so I know there's a lot of people that can speak to this better than I can. But you're getting in athletes a lot that are established. And I think it's not saying at all it's easier. It's a different challenge, right? You're trying to fine tune guys that have a ton of experience, that are good athletes, and get them to sort of reach their potential, whether they reached it in high school or not. Where I think in high school and junior rowing in general, it's a lot of developing young athletes and setting them up for a future, not just in the sport, but kind of in life. And that's something that I think that I enjoy doing. And I think it's a pretty special experience. So I don't really see myself jumping to college anytime soon.
There was a previous podcast that I had done with a prominent coach in the DC area that I got in an argument with when I said, collegiate is the peak of coaching. And he says, "Are you kidding me? Like, no, you're wrong. Like, I can build a high school program and make them just as fast, or the athletes are no different. They're just younger." So having now spent the last 6 months rethinking that, the reoccurring theme with high school coaches is what you just said. It's they enjoy more of developing the young athletes to be great adults and great people. And if you want to fine tune your thing and you want to make speed your focus, go for it. Go to the national team, go to the collegiate level.
Absolutely.
But if you want to impact kids on a greater level, be a high school coach. And that's really powerful. I'm glad to hear that. Now we're gonna close with, we're gonna round this thing out with your philosophy of coaching, trash talking, and camaraderie. So I bring this up because you started something that we were trying to do, right? You trash talk someone on social media about their program. I want to kind of get your philosophy on how coaches should interact, on what we should be doing as a group of coaches, but also as an industry. Give me your philosophy, and I want to hear your ego come through. It's okay. Like, people are going to find it. Like, talk to me about that. What are you looking to achieve here?
I just kind of want to have fun, right? Like, this is fun in general. Rowing, I think ends up being a lot of times this kind of stressful thing, and we're all like sort of pitted against each other, and watching coaches interact on race day, it's kind of funny, like how
it's obnoxious,
awkward,
right?
and
like they don't want to talk to each other. Like, come on,
and everybody's like kind of secretive about what they're doing, and like they have a special thing going on, right? Like, and it's not the case. We're all doing the same thing. There's not a ton of secrets in the sport, right? Yeah, everybody's got their own training plan and their philosophy and their stroke and all of that stuff. But like, we're all working hard. We're all doing the same thing. And then we go out on race day and see what we did, right? Like, I think, and part of that, and this comes from talking to Joe a lot, like, race day is an opportunity to show what we've done, right? It's not like we're coming out and trying to do something special. So we're all doing that, and we're putting our cards on the table and saying, "Hey, this is what we got. What do you guys have?" And I think that's sometimes gets missed. Like, at the end of the day, it's high school rowing, and I'm not trying to downplay it, but like, it's not like we're trying to cure COVID, right? Like, we can have fun with it and get into it a little bit, and we should be like, I don't know. I think there's too much uppityness in rowing in general.
Yeah, I'm going to expand on this one. So, it's high school rowing, right?
Totally.
So I think there's a period of time when, in the last probably decade, that coaches have created so much anxiety around winning that you've now caused athletes to be anxious and uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I had a coach. So I rowed in high school in 99 to 2004. like those 4 or 5 years is when I was rowing in my youth. My coaches, I will not name names, would get plastered drunk on Saturday nights. They would all joke around. They would laugh their asses off if we won or lost. And it did not matter. And we knew that environment, right? We were comfortable with it. We created our own pressures, right? I wanted to be in the varsity 8. I wanted to win a national championship. But at no point were they pressuring us like, you got to do this and you got to beat that, and like hiding that they were doing an 84, spread instead of an 83.5, like that kind of stupid shit that a lot of coaches tend to like hold behind a curtain.
Yeah.
So there was a period, and I don't know when it started or what it was, but we now see athletes much differently than they were back 10, 15 years ago. And I actually think that it starts with some of the coaching. And I appreciate that you want to bring that camaraderie back, right? I hate
Absolutely.
going to a regatta and not going to talk to a buddy of mine. Like, I had friends that I rode with in college that I coached against, and we wouldn't talk at regattas because, we were enemies. And I think that's just dumb, right? I mean, I think you agree.
I think a lot of that comes from this kind of ego that I think everybody has as coaches, where it's like, and when I say like it's high school rowing, I don't mean that it's not important, and I want to win like more than anybody. I'm super, super competitive.
Yes,
but it's about the kids, right? Like it's not about us as coaches, like regardless of what happens. And at the end of the day, like it's still going to be a coach, right? So we win or lose, like that's on me. And the plan that we've set up and all of that stuff. But I think allowing, especially in high school, like allowing high schoolers to be high schoolers and have fun in what they're doing, I think that kind of environment leads to more success, right? If you have people coming down every day and they're stressed out and worried about what they're doing and all of that stuff, they're not going to perform to the level that you're expecting. So if you can allow them to come down, and it's high school boys, right? I mean, they're 16 to 18 and they're going to be goofy and silly and all of that. And allowing them the opportunity to do that and have fun in the environment, but know when to switch it on, right? Like when we're on the water and it's go time, like it's go time. But when they're coming down before practice and they're goofing around, when they're stretching or they're talking and doing their dynamic warm up and having fun and joking around, like that's totally fine. And I think that's, for me, been a pretty big switch, where when I came into the sport and college and the U23 stuff and all of that, like it's just this level of professionalism and seriousness through it. And I think trying to replicate that at a high school level doesn't necessarily lead to success. And I think a lot of that comes from knowing your athletes, right? And knowing how they perform. Yeah.
There's a difference between grab assing
totally
and having fun, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting at that, right? So I don't think that kids should be throwing footballs and fucking skateboarding at a regatta, right? And like running around and hitting each other. But there is a level of just release that you have to have. You can't be wound up the whole time. You're right. No. It is high school rowing. High school rowing was the most important time in my life.
Same. Yeah, it was awesome.
Same. It was the best. Like it was the best 4 years of my rowing experience. But I had fun. I joked. I kid. I cracked jokes at other people. The coaches didn't make it so seriously. And we were national champions. Like we had medaled at SRAs at Stotesbury's. So I get that. Now I want to close this off. This has been a lot of fun. I really hope that you
appreciate this. Yeah, no, it's been great.
I think CJ knows where I'm going with this. So we always name. So now this is season 2. We name the podcast based on silly things that you or the other people say.
Yeah.
I kind of want to say we're not trying to cure COVID. Like, I think that's kind of like, it's high school rowing, and I don't want to use that because that demeans high school rowing. But you said we're not trying to cure COVID. That could be a really good title to
I love it.
This podcast. So, I have had, Chris, I have had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you have.
Yeah.
Good luck to your team in our
Thank
tournament. We have some announcements to make, and I'm going to say it now because we're in 8 minutes. We have another meeting. We're going international with this. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Your team is going to qualify to race internationally in the same bracket style competition against Asia, Europe, New Zealand.
That's awesome.
So get the guys excited a little bit.
Okay? Yeah, I've been meeting with the whole team at 3:30, so on Zoom. So I'll
Just
let them know.
lay it down and say, guys, guess what? I got the inside scoop. We're going international. All right.
Sweet. No,
So-
that's exciting. They'll be pumped about that.
I think they will too, and there's more prizes to be made and everything. So I hope you've enjoyed watching and listening to the Rower's Choice podcast with Chris Leonard of Capital Crew. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So